By the time I had turned 40, my life had already been shaped by loss, resilience, and solitude. I had spent nearly 2 decades teaching in boys' colleges, keeping my head down, never allowing the world's gossip or temptations to taint me. My husband had passed away only a month after our marriage when I was 22, and since then, I had chosen a life of dignity and self-reliance. I avoided scandal, avoided unnecessary friendships, and built my entire world around my students and the classroom. But one boy, Kamran, disrupted the quiet balance I had constructed for myself. Kamran was 17, mischievous, and sharper than he appeared. From the very beginning, I noticed something unsettling about the way his gaze lingered on me. While the other boys scribbled notes or whispered among themselves, Kamran's eyes remained fixed on my face, unblinking, filled with a strange intensity. At first, I brushed it off as childish mischief, but soon it began to gnaw at me. One day, while I was teaching, I asked him a direct question, hoping to jolt him out of his trance. He did not respond. It was only when another student shook him by the shoulder that he blinked, as though waking from a dream. "Where's your attention?" I demanded, my tone sharper than usual. "On you, miss," he replied without hesitation. The classroom erupted in laughter, and my cheeks flushed with humiliation. I ordered him out of the room immediately. He left with a mocking grin, as though he had won some small victory, leaving me seething with anger. Later, I stormed into the principal's office to lodge a complaint, hoping that disciplinary action would restore order. But, to my disappointment, the principal sighed deeply and urged me to overlook the matter. Kamran's father, he explained, was a wealthy businessman whose donations kept the college running. "Handle it with patience," he advised. "His family has requested special care for him." Don't escalate small issues. I felt betrayed. In my 20 years of service, never had I encountered such blatant disregard for a teacher's authority. Not only was the boy insolent, but now the institution itself seemed to shield him. To make matters worse, Kamran's eyes carried a disturbing glint, a sparkle that unsettled me far more than his words. It was as if he knew that no one would hold him accountable, and he could stretch the limits of my endurance however he pleased. That day marked the beginning of a storm I had not anticipated. I walked out of the principal's office with a heavy heart, knowing instinctively that Kamran's fixation on me would not end inside the classroom. It was the start of a trial that would shake the foundations of the life I had tried so carefully to preserve. When the final bell rang that afternoon, I gathered my books with a tired sigh, still unsettled from the principal's dismissal of my concerns. I wanted only to get home, lock my door, and leave the memory of Kamran's insolence behind me. But as I stepped out of the college gates into the crowded street, my heart sank. There he was, Kamran, leaning casually against a sleek motorbike as if he had been waiting all along. "Miss, let me drop you home," he called out, his voice pitched with false sweetness. The audacity of the offer stunned me. "No, thank you," I replied curtly, quickening my pace. But he started his bike and rolled along the curb beside me, talking as though we were equals. "Why are you always so serious?" "Come with me. We'll stop for some momos. I promise you'll enjoy it. You'll see I'm not so bad." My fists clenched around the strap of my bag. "Kamran, enough." "Stay in your limits," I said firmly. Instead of backing away, he laughed. "Limits?" "Miss, what limits? Can a student and teacher be friends? Don't tell me you never had friends when you were young." I wanted to strike him, to silence his smug tone with the slap he deserved. But the principal's warning echoed in my mind. If I caused a scene, I would be the one blamed. His father's money weighed heavier than my dignity. With every step, I felt trapped between rage and helplessness. The next day, during a staff break, I cautiously asked a few fellow teachers if Kamran behaved this way with them. To my shock, they all described him as respectful and quiet. "He's such a well-mannered boy," one of the younger women said warmly. "Always polite, never a problem in class." Their words confused me. Was I the only target of his mischief? When I later crossed paths with the principal again, his eyes gleamed with something close to mockery. "Perhaps Kamran has developed a special liking for you," he said, his tone deliberately teasing. Heat rushed to my face, half anger, half embarrassment. I left without a word, but the implication gnawed at me. Kamran's insolence was not only being dismissed, it was being reshaped into a narrative that made me seem the odd one, the overreacting teacher who could not handle a student's harmless crush. That evening, as I walked home, Kamran appeared again, trailing me on his motorbike like a shadow. Every turn I made, he mirrored, his gaze sliding brazenly over me. I told myself to stay strong, but the truth whispered inside me this boy was not going to stop, and I had no ally willing to confront him. By the time I reached home that evening, my nerves were raw. My house was small but had always been my sanctuary, a place where I could close the door on the world and feel safe. Yet that night, even the familiar walls seemed unable to protect me from the unease gnawing at my chest. I replayed Kamran's words again and again, the way he had leaned close on his motorbike, grinning like I was his equal, or worse, his possession. My next-door neighbor, Samina, noticed my pale face as I unlocked my door. "What's wrong?" she asked kindly. She and her husband had long been my greatest support. He often told the whole neighborhood that I was under his family's protection, daring anyone to speak ill of me. His open declaration had saved me from many whispers and advances. "She is like my sister," he would say, and if anyone dares to disrespect her, they'll answer to me. The neighbors had mocked, of course. They spun stories about me, accused me of impropriety simply because I lived alone. Still, Samina and her husband's loyalty gave me a shield, and I clung to that. So, when she asked if I was all right, I only forced a small smile and waved her off. How could I tell her that a boy, half my age, was stalking me? How could I explain that the fear tightening in my chest wasn't just of him, but of the shame and gossip his behavior could bring upon me? That night, as the clock crept past 10, I settled in my room with a book. It was my habit never to leave the room after this hour. I locked the door, creating a little bubble of safety. But suddenly, a sharp knock shattered the silence. My breath caught. I froze, the book slipping from my trembling hands to the floor. Another knock, louder this time. My pulse hammered. I didn't need to open the door to know who it was. Kamran's voice confirmed my worst fear. "Miss, please open the door," he whispered hoarsely. "I just wanted to see you. I know you like me too, you just can't say it. Don't worry, I won't tell anyone. This will stay between us." Shame and terror washed over me. I pressed my palm against my mouth to stifle a cry. He was only 17, yet his words carried the brazenness of a man far older. The door rattled under his push, and I thought he might break it down. "Go away!" I finally screamed, summoning all my strength. "Leave before I call your parents. Leave or I'll kill you." But his reply chilled me further. "My parents won't believe you." "No one will. I'll wait here all night if I have to." He slid down against the door, sitting outside like a sentry. Inside, I crawled into bed, clutching the blanket, tears slipping silently into my pillow. That night, sleep only came with prayer, and even then it was fragile, haunted by the sense that my sanctuary had been breached. Morning brought a deceptive calm. When I finally gathered the courage to unlock the door, Kamran was gone. Relief washed over me in a heavy wave, but it was tainted by dread. His absence was not victory. It was only a pause before the next intrusion. My instincts told me he was not finished with me, and that thought kept my chest tight all day. Desperate to share the burden, I decided to confide in the only person I trusted. Samina, my neighbor and closest friend. Her presence had always comforted me, and I thought that perhaps if she knew the truth, she might help me decide what to do. So I walked to her house, rehearsing in my head how I might explain Kamran's behavior without sounding paranoid or weak. But as I reached her doorway, voices drifted into the corridor. I paused, recognizing her husband's tone. What I heard next froze me where I stood. "Honestly, I don't think Samina is as innocent as she looks," he was saying, his words measured but laced with implication. "The other day, her eyes lingered on me in a way that didn't seem right." A woman living alone for so many years? Who knows what she does when no one is watching? My knees nearly buckled. He was not speaking about Samina at all. He was speaking about me. About me, the woman who had trusted him like an older brother, the one who had taken solace in his promise of protection. His voice carried the same suggestive glint I had once seen in his eyes when, weeks earlier, he had vaulted onto my rooftop under the pretense of casual conversation. That day, I had sensed something wrong in his closeness, but I had ignored it, choosing instead to focus on his brotherly facade. Now the truth rang out like a slap. He was poisoning Samina's mind against me, paving the way for his own desires. My stomach churned. I could not bear to hear more. Without knocking, without stepping inside, I turned and walked back to my house, my steps heavy and hollow. The betrayal cut deeper than Kamran's brazen harassment. If even Samina's husband could twist his words to defile my character, then whom could I trust? Back in my room, I sat on the edge of my bed, my hands trembling in my lap. The world outside seemed full of predators cloaked in respectability. The men who claimed to protect me, who called me sister, were no different from the reckless boy who lingered outside my door. Their desires reduced me to an object. Their whispers painted me guilty before I had even spoken. That day, a hard truth settled in my heart. I was utterly alone in this struggle. And if I wanted to survive it, I would need more than prayer and silence. The betrayal of Samina's husband left me hollow, but there was little time to grieve the loss of trust. The next morning, when I arrived at college, I was summoned straight to the principal's office. His expression was sharp, his tone clipped. "Why do you keep humiliating Kamran?" he demanded. "His father has lodged a complaint that you single him out, punish him unnecessarily, and embarrass him before the class. This must stop." My lips parted in disbelief. "Sir, But he raised a hand, cutting me off. "Enough! If you cannot handle a student without creating constant drama, then perhaps this is not the right place for you. Remember, our institution cannot afford to lose Kamran's father's support. If this continues, I will have no choice but to relieve you of your duties." The weight of his words crushed me. This job was not just a paycheck, it was my lifeline. Without it, I would have no way to sustain myself. The fear of unemployment gnawed at me more fiercely than Kamran's threats. My voice shook as I whispered an apology, swallowing my pride just to hold on to the only security I had. That evening, the campus emptied as usual, teachers and students filing out until only a few staff members lingered. I stayed behind to finish grading papers in the staff room, as I often did. The corridors were quiet, the kind of stillness that makes every sound echo. Suddenly, the door creaked open. I looked up, startled. And there he was. Kamran, standing in the doorway with a smile that was equal parts mischief and triumph. He stepped inside slowly, carrying something behind his back. "Assalamu alaikum, miss," he said smoothly. "Assam, how are you today?" Before I could respond, he revealed what he had been hiding, a single red rose. He extended it toward me, his gaze fixed and unwavering. "My only wish is simple," he declared. "I want to marry you." "I want you to be a part of my life. I see no wrong in it." The audacity of his words stole my breath. "Do you have no shame?" I snapped. "I am old enough to be your mother." "Do you think this is love? It is madness." But he was undeterred. "Age does not matter. Did not the prophet marry Khadijah, who was much older? Why should you deny us what is clearly meant to be?" Anger and disgust surged through me. Yet beneath it all, a darker fear pressed against my ribs. He would not stop. His persistence was no longer just childish infatuation. It was obsession. An obsession, I knew, could become dangerous. The storm that followed was both outside and within me. That night, rain lashed the streets, thunder rattled the windows, and I felt the same chaos inside my chest. I tried to drown myself in chores, folding laundry, reading, anything to distract from Kamran's proposal and the principal's threats. But the truth pressed against my heart. I was cornered. As I moved about my small home, flashes of memory struck me like lightning. I remembered being 22, newly married, still learning how to smile in my husband's presence, when death tore him from me just weeks after our wedding. My in-laws had called me cursed, a woman of bad fortune, and they cast me out without mercy. My father, already frail, died within a month of hearing the news. My mother was long gone. I had clung to my elder sister for shelter, but even she pushed me away, fearful of her husband's wandering eyes and unwilling to take the risk of harboring me. I had ended up back in my late mother's modest house alone with little but my dignity to sustain me. Over the years, I turned that loneliness into armor. teaching became my refuge. The chatter of classrooms, the rustle of notebooks, the occasional smile from students who genuinely respected me. These were the threads I wove into a semblance of life. I had spent 18 years like this, fighting whispers, ignoring proposals laced with greed, refusing to let men exploit my vulnerability. And now, after all those years, it was a boy, just 17, who was testing my defenses. As the storm raged outside, another knock echoed at my door. My heart leapt into my throat. It wasn't Kamran's voice this time, but the neighbor's husband, the same man I had overheard tarnishing my name. "Sister," he called softly, "please open. I only want to speak to you. Don't leave me standing here in the rain, terror and fury tangled inside me." I dragged heavy furniture against the door, stacking it as a barrier, and backed away, trembling. His knocking grew louder, more insistent, almost pleading, but I would not move. I crouched in the corner of my room, tears streaming, whispering prayers until my throat went dry. Outside, rain pounded and wind howled, but inside my fear was louder. When dawn finally broke, my eyes were swollen from crying, my body aching from the tension of holding myself still. I had survived the night, but it left me with a brutal truth. The world outside was full of predators, and I was running out of strength to fend them off. By the time the sun rose after that storm, I was hollowed out as though the rain had washed away the little courage I had left. I could not keep living in a constant state of dread, teaching all day under Kamran's gaze, spending my evenings avoiding his motorbike circling my street, and passing nights with the fear of knocks on my door. Every escape I had built for myself was collapsing. That morning, when Kamran confronted me again outside the college gates, his face was glowing with a reckless certainty. "Miss, you know this is fate," he said, his voice softer than usual but no less unsettling. "You cannot keep fighting it. You should be with me. Marry me, and all your struggles will end." I wanted to shout at him to expose his arrogance before the students streaming past us, but my throat was dry. For the first time, exhaustion outweighed resistance. His persistence had battered down my walls until even defiance felt pointless. Later that week, when he came to me with the same demand, I heard myself whisper a word I never thought I would say. Yes. The transformation was instant. His eyes lit up with boyish delight. His grin stretched wide as if the world had handed him its most precious gift. He twirled the keys of his motorbike in his fingers, laughing like a child who had finally won his favorite toy. Watching his euphoria, I felt only a cold heaviness inside me. It was not love that led me to agree, it was survival. The wedding was simple, quiet, almost hidden. There were no crowds, no decorations, no blessings from family. Only a contract signed in haste, as though even the world itself disapproved. I told myself I was simply surrendering to end the torment, but as the ink dried, I knew I had stepped into something far stranger. Because after the marriage, Kamran changed. The obsessive fire that had once burned in his eyes dimmed into something different, something I could not recognize. He no longer pressed me with the hunger of desire. Instead, he treated me like a guardian, a caretaker. To the servants in his sprawling family home, he introduced me as his aunt, who had come to live with him. I was not a bride, not a partner, but a figure tucked into his household as though my existence was meant to be hidden. Each morning he rose early, demanded breakfast from my hands, and went off to college. Each evening he returned to me with chatter about his day, resting his head in my lap like a boy returning to his mother. The strangeness of it all unnerved me. He had fought so hard to claim me, yet what he wanted now seemed nothing like marriage at all. 3 months passed in this strange twilight of marriage, and with every day I felt the dissonance grow sharper. Kamran was my husband in name, but in practice he was something else entirely, part child, part dependent, almost never a man. He never once tried to claim conjugal rights, never spoke of intimacy, and never hinted at the kind of closeness that defines a marriage. Instead, he clung to me in ways that made my skin crawl. Every evening, as soon as he returned from college, he would call for me, his voice full of expectation. I would set his meal on the table, and he would beam like a boy whose mother had prepared his favorite dish. Afterward, he would stretch out on the sofa, resting his head in my lap, and demand that I run my fingers through his hair. Tell me a story from your day, he would say, his eyes closing in bliss, as though my presence alone was enough to soothe him. At first, I told myself this was simply his way of expressing affection. Perhaps he was nervous, too young to know how to be a husband. But then came the moment that broke any illusions I had left. One evening, while tracing patterns in the folds of my dupatta, he looked up at me and said softly, almost dreamily, "Thank you, Mama." The word struck me like a slap. I froze, my hand midway through stroking his hair. "What did you just call me?" I demanded, my voice trembling with anger. He blinked at me innocently. "Mama," he repeated as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Bah, that's what you are to me. You take care of me. You love me. Isn't that what mothers do?" A fire lit in my chest. After everything, the relentless pursuit, the defiance of my refusals, the marriage forced upon me, he had reduced me not to a partner, not even to a woman, but to a mother figure. My rage was so intense I thought I might strike him then and there, but all I did was push him away and retreat into silence, my mind spinning. In the days that followed, his behavior grew more bizarre. Sometimes he would speak of me marrying his father instead because a father deserves the kind of motherly love I was giving. Other times he would pout like a child denied a toy, demanding that I cook something special or sing him to sleep. It was as though marriage had never been his true desire. He had sought something else entirely, something I could barely put into words. And deep inside, a terrible realization began to form. I had not married a husband. I had been tricked into filling the void left by someone else's absence. The truth came to me slowly, like a curtain lifting after months of confusion. One afternoon, while speaking with one of the older servants in the house, I finally heard the missing piece of Kamran's story. His mother had abandoned him years ago, leaving for another life abroad and never once looking back. He had grown up in that cavernous mansion surrounded by wealth, but starved of affection. Servants had raised him, discipline had been absent, and love had been a word he barely understood. As the servant spoke, everything fell into place. The way Kamran clung to me, the way he sought comfort in my lap, his refusal to approach me as a wife, and most painfully, his insistence on calling me Mama. He had never truly wanted a partner. He had wanted a mother to replace the one who had left him, a figure to fill the emptiness that haunted him since childhood. Anger warred with pity inside me. Anger because he had deceived me, pursued me with relentless obsession, and forced me into a marriage I never wanted. Pity because beneath the arrogance and boldness, he was nothing more than a neglected child whose heart had been twisted by abandonment. That night, when he once again placed his head in my lap and spoke about how safe he felt with me, I gathered the strength to end this charade. "Kamran," I said firmly, "Beshoen, if what you need is a mother's love, then I will give it to you. But you must let me go as your wife. Divorce me, and I promise I will still care for you, still guide you, still stand by you in the way a mother would, but this marriage cannot continue." He stared at me for a long moment, his youthful face torn between fear and relief. Finally, he nodded. The next day, he agreed to the divorce papers. It was done quietly, without drama, without resistance. Once freed, I contacted his father, who was shocked and ashamed when I explained what had happened. He promised to seek proper treatment for Kamran and thanked me for revealing the truth. For me, it was closure. I sold my old home, accepted some financial help from his father, and left for Turkey, where I started anew. There, I built a life not as someone's mama, nor as someone's burden, but as a woman who finally found dignity, peace, and love on her own terms. Turkey became the clean slate I had long prayed for. Away from the suffocating gossip of my neighborhood, the poisonous whispers of men, and the shadow of Kamran's obsession, I finally breathed freely. I rented a modest apartment in a quiet district and began offering private tutoring lessons. The work was steady, the children respectful, and for the first time in years I felt useful without feeling hunted. Yet even in that new world, the scars of my past sometimes ached. I would hear laughter in the streets and remember Kamran's mocking grin, or watch a young man ride by on a motorbike and feel my pulse spike in fear. Healing was not immediate. It was a slow rebuilding of trust in myself and in life. But each day I rose, taught, and returned to my apartment alone, I felt a little stronger. It was in this rhythm of rebuilding that I met Yusuf, a widower close to my age. He too carried wounds of loss, having raised his daughter alone after his wife's passing. Our first conversations were practical, exchanging teaching resources, recommending bookstores, but gradually something warmer unfolded. With him, I was not an object, not a savior, not a replacement mother. I was simply a woman, valued for my companionship and respected for my voice. When he proposed marriage, there was no frenzy, no obsession, no manipulation. There was only honesty and a quiet promise of partnership. For the first time since my youth, I allowed myself to say yes without fear. Looking back, I understood what Kamran had done. He had not been a monster, but a broken child clutching desperately for love he never received. His mistake was turning his hunger into an obsession that trapped us both, and my mistake was yielding to his persistence out of exhaustion. But mistakes, no matter how heavy, need not define the rest of one's life. In Turkey, with Yusuf by my side, I built a home that was not gilded by wealth, nor clouded by shame. It was a simple home, but it carried laughter, respect, and peace. I finally knew what it meant to be safe, not behind locked doors or heavy furniture, but in the heart of someone who cherished me as his equal. My story had begun with fear, betrayal, and loneliness. It ended with dignity and love.